Hello, this is Odunlami, immigration attorney from the Odunlami Law Firm here in Cedar Knolls, New Jersey. My law firm serves clients from all 50 states of the United States, and our passion is helping fellow immigrants to navigate the immigration process so that they can begin to get their American dream, which is getting your green card and naturalizing. So I'm sorry if I'm not looking at you because I still haven't figured out this computer thing, but just listen on. Don't worry about whether we're making eye contact. So today I have a wonderful topic, and this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I'm sure you must have guessed it. It's VAWA, Violence Against Women's Act. So I'm going to wait for a couple more people to come on so that we can have more audience, because I have some really good information to give you. So, so VAWA was enacted by Congress in 1994, and because Congress realized how difficult it was for somebody who was already a victim to rely on their abuser to give them immigration status. So as a result of that, they came up with a way that somebody who's been battered can self-petition and get their green card without having to ask for the assistance of the abuser. So there are different ways that you can qualify to file under VAWA, but let us start with the people that can file under VAWA. If you're the spouse of a US citizen or a green card holder and you've been abused, definitely you qualify, right? There are other things that are required, but that's for starters. That's a qualifying status. If you're the child of a US citizen or a green card holder who has been abused, that's another status that qualifies. If you're the parent of a child who has been abused by a US citizen or a green card holder parent, even though you're not being abused as the parent of that child, you can get your green card through your child who's been abused. And if you're the parent of a US citizen who's 21 and above, you can qualify to file for VAWA. So, so those are the categories that would qualify for VAWA. So I have a couple of questions that my clients ask all the time, and I have written them down because I want to answer those questions for you. So one question I get all the time is, do I have to stay married to my abusive spouse? And the answer to that is no, you do not need to stay married to your abusive spouse. You can choose to stay married to your abusive spouse, because filing VAWA doesn't mean that you have to leave your spouse. It doesn't require you to divorce your spouse. However, if you choose to divorce your spouse, you have to file the VAWA petition within 2 years of the divorce. So I have another question that I get asked all the time. Can I divorce my spouse? I think I answered that already. Yes, you can. Another question I get all the time is, will my spouse find out if I file VAWA? Only if you tell them. So even if you choose to stay with your spouse, typically your attorney will use their address as a safe mailing address so that you don't get any letters from USCIS. And that way your petition is safe. And even if there was a petition pending, maybe your spouse had filed for you before, and you decide to go the VAWA route, where the petition was filed with USCIS, they're not allowed to tell your spouse that you filed VAWA now. So if your concern about filing VAWA is that your spouse is going to know, or your child who is abusive is going to know, that's something you should not be worried about, because VAWA is, they keep that information safe to protect you. Okay? So another question I get is, my petition was denied. Can I still file VAWA? Yes, you can. So even if your spouse filed an I-130 petition for you and it was denied for many reasons, so some of the reasons for denial could be because the spouse didn't show up, or they went to the interview and sabotaged you by pretending not to answer questions correctly, or they lied about things, or maybe you didn't show up because you're afraid. It doesn't matter. So even if you have a denial, it doesn't stop you from filing VAWA as long as you can prove that your spouse, you are in a qualifying relationship, which I've discussed, that you were abused or were subjected to extreme cruelty, or that and that you're a person of good moral character. So let me take some questions here. I have Abiodun Ayodeji Zurakat, who says, Ma, can I withdraw my VAWA case from a lawyer? Please, what I need to get from them? You can always withdraw your case from a lawyer. I mean, you just tell your lawyer you don't want them to represent you anymore, and then get a copy of whatever they filed for you. That's really it, So let's see. So now I also want to talk about, there's a question I get all the time from people who are in deportation proceedings who want to know if they can still file for VAWA. Yes, you can. You can actually file for VAWA as an affirmative case, or VAWA cancellation of removal. Those are two separate requirements. So those are things that you can do. So it doesn't matter what step of the process you are in, you can file for VAWA. So now let's talk about the things that you're required to do to be able to process your VAWA claim. First of all, you have to show that you're married to, if you on the topic of marriage, you have to show that you're married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder. Now, typically, some people are not able to prove that because maybe the abuser is hiding the documents, or they were kicked out of the house without being able to retrieve any of the documents. But that shouldn't deter you. If you know or you think that your U.S. citizen spouse, if your spouse is a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, that shouldn't deter you, because there are ways of getting around that to prove that you were indeed married to a U.S. citizen or a green card holder, right? And sometimes you're married to somebody and you find out, typically at the interview, that your spouse is a bigamist, which means that they were married to somebody else, they didn't get a divorce, and they married you. So that will not deter your claim, your VAWA claim. It will not. As long as you can show that you went into that marriage in good faith, thinking that he or she was married, and that you had a ceremony, the bigamous nature of the relationship, which is caused by the abusive spouse, will not deter your VAWA filing. So what are the things that you required to prove for you to be able to bring a VAWA claim? Well, first of all, you have to prove it's a real marriage. You have to prove that you entered into this marriage not for immigration benefits, but because you wanted to be married to this person. And with all other relationships, like marital relationships, where you have to prove that it's a bona fide marriage, you do have to prove that it's a bona fide marriage here. So you have to do the things that you're supposed to show. First of all, you have to show that if you were married before, that you were properly divorced, right? Which makes you eligible to remarry. And you want to show that that you did get married, you lived with your abuser. You must live with your spouse. Now, the regulations and the rules don't say how long you have to live with your spouse, but you do have to live with them for some period of time, and you do have to show proof that you lived with them. And then you have to show that there was other ways of showing a bona fide marriage is showing commingling of assets. Maybe you have pictures of family members, you and your spouse doing things, going places, leases, bank accounts, that kind of stuff, right? But the truth of the matter is, sometimes in an abusive relationship, I have found that some people are not even able to have those commingling of finances, because as part of the abuse, the abuser will typically refuse to open a bank account, will refuse to give them information about anything. So it's hard for them to have this information to prove. And so as part of the abuse, they're unable to give bona fides. But those are things that we take into consideration, and those are things that we work around. I've gotten clients who were kicked out of their home in the middle of the night, had nothing but the clothes on their back, and were able to show a bona fide relationship because we're able to we have the declaration statement. We're able to provide affidavits from people that knew them as a couple. And we're able to, also just do a little investigative journalism to show that this was indeed a real marriage. So you also have to show abuse. Now, that's a topic I want to talk about, because people think that for you to be able to file VAWA, you have to show that you were smacked around, or that the police was called, or that you had injuries. No, you don't have to show that. If you have that, that's definitely very helpful. However, abuse can be more than physical abuse. I was listening to I was reading something on Facebook the other day about a woman who decided to change her hairstyle for her birthday. I think she cut her hair and she colored her hair or something, and she came back home and her husband was upset and beat her up, smacked her around for changing her hair. That's abuse. But the funny thing is, as I was reading the comments, there were people there that were like, well, she should have asked her husband before she made changes to herself. And what I've realized is that abuse, what people define as abuse, can be cultural. So you could come from a place where you're required, in the culture, things that it's disrespectful for you to make changes to your body without talking to your husband first. But here in the United States, controlling somebody is abuse. So I say this because there are people who don't know they're being abused because they've been either raised in an abusive atmosphere, in an abusive home, or this is what the only thing they know. They don't realize they're being abused. If your spouse is not letting you be in contact with your family, not letting you talk to your parents, your siblings, keeping you away from your friends, not allowing you to have food in the house, not giving you the things you need to be able to, function when you're not able to work, that's abuse, And so you want to talk to a lawyer if you feel if you're unhappy in your marriage and you feel you're not being treated well, so that lawyer can decide and can go over your information to decide if you qualify for VAWA, because cruelty, extreme cruelty, is abusive, and that can qualify you for VAWA. So abuse doesn't have to be physical. It can be emotional. If your spouse is calling you names, treating you badly, embarrassing you in front of people, going through your phone, accusing you of cheating nonstop, ridiculing you, shaming you, that is abuse. Abuse can be financial too, and a lot of financial abuse is geared towards men, where they're required to pay for things, buy things, and the spouse in the house refuses to do anything, refuses to work, refuses to basically tells them, if you don't provide me with this, I want this bag. If you don't buy it, then I'm going to be upset. I'm going to divorce you. If I divorce you, you're not going to be able to get your papers. So financial abuse does exist. Is your spouse refusing for you to better yourself, refusing for you to work, or forcing you to work when they know you have no papers? Are they stopping you from going to school to get educated? That could be abuse. Are they forcing you to have children when you don't want to have children? Keeping you pregnant when you don't want to be, forcing you to do things that they want to do where you don't have a say in the matter. That could be abuse, right? And unfortunately, for USCIS, infidelity on its face is not abuse unless it's done in an abusive manner. So basically, this goes to show you that there's a lot more going with abuse than what people think. So if you're in a relationship where you feel you're not being treated well, you feel like your spouse is cruel to you, you probably want to talk to a lawyer to see if that rises to the level of abuse that can be used to file a VAWA petition for you. So let's see what else. Now let's talk about being a person of good moral character. That's a requirement for VAWA. So sometimes we always have to get police clearances, FBI fingerprints, reports, and all that to show that you're a person of good moral character, which means you haven't been involved in drugs, crimes of moral turpitude and all that. However, there are certain, I want to call it conduct that can be waived, which means that you've done certain things that would ordinarily disqualify you from filing VAWA. However, we can get a waiver. So it depends on what conduct that was. So Nayla has a question. Nayla, what is your question? Right, okay, I'm gonna wait for you to write your question in the comments while I continue. So yes, being a person of good moral character is important. However, I've noticed that with a lot of abuse victims, the abuser will try to turn the table on them. We'll call the police and accuse them of being the abuser, you know, but that shouldn't deter you. Like I said, the best thing to do is call a lawyer who specializes in VAWA, right? Tell your story, and you know they can help you build a strong case, even if you have a spouse who's making stories up against you, because that's part of the abuse. You know, threatening to call authorities, threatening to tell the authorities that that you were the aggressor, right? Or you know, telling you that, you know, if you call the authorities, nothing's going to happen because you're not a U.S. citizen and nobody cares about you. So that's part of the abuse, you know, so because abuse shows up in very, very different ways. So you want to talk to somebody. So Nayla, you said if the bad, I'm reading if the bad marriage, but that's all I'm reading. So, you know, what is the question so I can assist you? If you're in a bad marriage, that's what this whole topic is about. If you're in a bad marriage, you do not have to stay in a bad marriage. If you're married to a U.S. citizen or green card holder, you can self-petition and get a green card for yourself without your spouse knowing and without anyone you don't want knowing unless you tell them. So VAWA really is a blessing. VAWA is a gift. You know, it empowers people who are being abused and tries to put them in a position where they can begin to live their lives without fear. Right, so that's the requirement for being a person of good moral character. And we've talked about the fact that you have to have entered the marriage in good faith. You have to show that it's a real marriage, and you have to show that it's a bona fide marriage, and you have to show that you live with your abuser. So, but the regular easy VAWA case is where there's, you know, a police report and the person was beaten up. But most cases, the difficulty is that the abuser doesn't have the power to produce the evidence needed, and that's where it's good to have a lawyer who knows VAWA and understands VAWA, because we're able to skirt around all these problems to be able to produce a solid VAWA case for you. So Nayla, if you're married to a U.S. citizen and you're in a bad marriage, I would want to talk to you about that, because I'm not sure what qualifies for you as a bad marriage. Are you being treated badly? We want to go through your story to know if you can qualify for VAWA, because VAWA is, you know, it's not clear cut. You know, one person's abuse could be different from another person's, the abuse another person is suffering. So there's no, I mean, we can tell you some of the things that are abusive behaviors, right, which is normal, typical. But like I said to you, sometimes you don't even know you're being abused because maybe culturally or from your household, this is the behavior you've seen and accept as normal. So you want to talk to somebody if you're in a relationship where your spouse is treating you badly. And there's certain triggers, there's certain things I see that make me realize that there must be more going on in that relationship. You're married to somebody for several years and they haven't filed for you. That's a form of control, because they know that if they file for you, you can get a work permit, you can get a green card, you can begin to, you know, empower yourself, and they want to stop you from doing that. So they don't file for you, and they threaten you with, or sometimes they don't even threaten you, they promise you, oh, we don't have enough money now because I have to go to school, I have to do this, but I'll file for you. Then 5 years later, they still haven't filed. 10 years later, they still haven't filed. And you realize that they don't really want to file for you because they like the fact that you rely on them, you depend on them, you can't do anything without them. and you're afraid to leave them because what would you do? You know, so that's a form of abuse. You know, there's also verbal abuse when your spouse is calling you names. You know, it could be derogatory names that, you know, that have to do with where you're from, or derogatory names that have to do with your sexuality, you know, calling you a whore, a slut, or, you know, stuff like that, you know, or constantly telling you that you're sleeping around or cheating with somebody, going through your phones, going through your email, you know, not letting you talk to people of the opposite sex, right? And or kicking you out whenever there's a fight, you know, changing the locks, kicking you out, knowing that you have nowhere to go and then you have to come back, you know, all that control, you know, mind games, you know, it's abuse. So your abuser doesn't have to be somebody who's smacking you around or being or you know, being really mean as you would consider it. It could be somebody who's playing mind games, you know, just controlling you, yanking you up and down, knowing that you rely on them and they want to keep you reliant on them, right? That could be abuse. So so that's what I want to talk about. But you also know that there are different other ways to file VAWA. If you're a child of a U.S. citizen or green card holder and you're being abused, you could file for VAWA on your own without having to without your parents. You can file on your own. If your parents were to file, you can also get a derivative claim from your parents filing. So if you are the spouse of a U.S. citizen and you have children, right, your children can get their green cards through your filing, as long as those children, as long as the marriage took place before the children turned 18. That's the marriage that created the step relationship. So Naila, you said what you need make my case is approved VAWA. So Naila, it sounds like you want to file for VAWA. It sounds like you said you're in a bad marriage. It's not really clear to me what the question is, but I would encourage you to call my office so we can talk about it, or call an attorney and talk about it so that they really understand what's going on and can give you proper advice, because nothing takes the place of a proper consultation with a lawyer. You know, talking on a video, talking about the basic requirements of VAWA does not take the place of a proper consultation. You want to talk to somebody who you can explain what's going on in your case in privacy, in a private setting, and they can tell you whether or not your case, you could file for VAWA, or maybe you have another option, because there are many other humanitarian visas. There's a U visa if you might not even be married to a U.S. citizen or green card holder, but you've been the victim of violence and you help the police in some way. You could file a U visa. So there are different types of humanitarian pathways to a green card. If you're a child who's been abused, neglected, or abandoned by one or both parents, you can file under the special immigrant juvenile status. So that's the reason why you do want to talk to an attorney and figure out what your options could be. Okay. All right. So I'm gonna sign off now because I don't see any other questions. But we will go over other types of the other requirements for filing VAWA. If you're a child, if you're a parent of a U.S. citizen, you know, all the things that you need to do. So again, my office number is 973-993-1900.